Okay.
Yep.
Well, good afternoon or good evening or good morning from wherever you are in the world. We are really pleased to have a wonderful session with you today on Amplifying Her Voice Mother's Day Summit. And our session is all about women's health and a deep dive. We're going to cover topics around, pelvic and recovery post childbirth, resolution, and holistic healing. Also, we will touch on taboo issues like incontinence and how caring about safe hygiene can support an active life. And we all know that COVID is a pandemic for all of us, but before COVID and still continues is diabetes. So we are going to look into diabetes with Stacy here, and she's going to tell us more about it. What to take away from this is that our expert speakers are going to offer us really invaluable insights and advice in how to take care of our own health and especially of our loved ones. So if I can do a virtual applause for you, dear speakers, thank you so much for being on board today. The agenda here is we will do a first round of introductions and then we will start with some questions. So from my side, I am the moderator of this session. I'm Petronella Sandula. I'm based in Switzerland, in Zurich, and I am the founder of Cordifio Health, a digital health platform dedicated to awareness raising of heart disease in women and also early detection of heart disease in women. And this is a really important topic because heart disease actually, and sadly, it's the #1 killer of women, more than all cancers combined. And 50% of the women following a heart attack get diagnosed with things like anxiety or depression or heartburn. And that happened in my family. I lost my mom due to a misdiagnosis of heart disease. And now it's time to do something about it. So I'm really honored to be your moderator tonight and especially hearing more about your exciting stories. Okay. So maybe I will start with the first person at my right, and that's Katie Sutherland. Please, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Sutherland. I'm tuning in here from Oregon on the west coast of the U.S. I've been a holistic health practitioner and body worker for the past 18 years. My specialty is in trauma resolution using biodynamic craniosacral therapy, as well as providing holistic health and self-care strategies to women of all ages and stages. But my particular focus has been in the childbearing years, so from fertility, so conception through postpartum, doing both hands-on body work and teaching a lot about self-care practices and ways to naturally support a healthy and optimal menstrual cycle throughout the whole time you're menstruating and while having children. So, and my latest passion project is called Inner Wisdom Motherhood, and it's circles for moms who've had difficult birth experiences. So we address everything from birth trauma and trauma resolution practices to the more esoteric and spiritual aspects of becoming a mother and what that means in our current climate, current global situation. It's been interesting this year doing this work in the pandemic. So
I'm sure.
Thank you.
Definitely. Well, thank you. For sure, we would like to deep dive a little bit into the winner wisdom motherhood, especially for the mothers in the audience. So please be prepared for some questions, as we will have a Q&A session with our, and especially trauma resolution. That's another big topic. So thank you, Katie.
Yes, thank you.
Esther, please.
Hi, my name is Esther Stubbs. I am a specialist women health and sports injury physiotherapist and the founder of the Pelvic Power Movement. I founded the movement to help women predominantly suffering with prolapse and incontinence post-childbirth. I found that in my clinic on a one-to-one basis, I'm only able to help a limited number of people and only those locally. And although horrific as the pandemic is, it gave me the opportunity to come out of the clinic a little bit and come online. And since the group started, we now have nearly 2,500 women in there, which it only launched about 6 months ago. So there's obviously a real need for this support. It's a really positive and supportive community. My mission really is to empower women to get confidence in their bodies again, get back to the activities they love and that are too afraid to do. So many women are at home terrified of running, jumping, doing any activity. They feel that their insides are going to fall out, and they just need some reassurance about what they should be doing and what they can be doing, and really supporting them in that. We have some courses that I run and some memberships for women who sort of want to really commit to their pelvic health and take it a step further and making it affordable for, rather than coming to see me one-on-one, it's much more affordable when they do it in a group. So we're trying to reach as many people as we possibly can with the information.
Is this a global movement, Esther?
It is a global movement, although I am actually based in the UK in a small town called Stamford, which is about an hour north of London. Most people know where that is. The beauty of being online is that we have a lot of women in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and we're reaching people that don't have access to pelvic health. So people like in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, in Oman, those countries where women may not be able to access the benefits of the healthcare that countries like the US and the UK and European countries have. So it's been fantastic. I'm currently running a free pelvic health workshop this week in our community, which has been very successful so far. Lots of new members taking part and sort of absorbing and enjoying the information.
So much, Esther.
You're welcome.
Definitely something to look into, especially about this, related to this free pelvic workshop. I'm into it. Please send us the details in the chat so we can sign up for that.
Sure, I'll pop them in there.
I'm up for it. Thank you. Stacy Sims.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Stacy. I am the host of Diabetes Connections, which is a weekly podcast for and about people with diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. So I used to say the show was all about people with type 1 diabetes, but a few years in, and I've been doing it for 6 years this month, we realized that many people with type 2 diabetes and other forms of diabetes who use insulin were coming to the show. It's information and inspiration, but there's a lot of information. I talk to technology companies and I do personal stories of people who live with diabetes, but mostly it's information about, insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, new technology, different insulins, that sort of thing. So it's been a really interesting road for me. My son was diagnosed with type 1 more than 14 years ago, right before he turned 2. And that's how I was led to it. I also have a background in broadcasting and local radio and television news. So you kind of married the two. This is a really interesting topic because women and diabetes, any kind of diabetes, is so understudied. And people with diabetes, for the most part, unfortunately, are kind of left to their own devices to figure it out anyway. It's the only condition where they basically give you a medication that will save you or kill you, insulin, and then send you home and say, figure it out. enjoy managing that. It's incredible to see how people manage this chronic condition 24/7. And they see their doctors maybe once every 3 months, and maybe they don't even see an endocrinologist. The vast majority of people with diabetes see a general practitioner. So women, as a subset in that, is also very understudied and underserved. So we have focused, and I didn't realize that because I have a son and I don't have diabetes and I didn't have gestational diabetes. So as we went through this, we realized, there are all of these topics, menopause, pregnancy, your period, your cycle, and they have not really been, there may have been some studies, but they haven't really been explained well. And certainly as women get older, people with type 1 didn't live, 100, we're celebrating the 100th year of insulin this year. So you're talking about probably the first generation to really live well into their older years. So menopause among women with diabetes, that's not studied at all. So there's a lot to dive into here, and I'm obviously very interested and passionate about it. But just for other things, tomorrow I'm actually speaking at a podcast conference. I do a lot with podcasting, and then also on Thursday evening, New York time, on Eastern time, I'm doing part of a panel about low blood sugar treatments and hypoglycemia. I'm on that panel as a layperson, as a mom, and how we manage. But there are experts and physicians on that too. I can put that in the chat as we go forward. So that's all about me.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you.
As we know, diabetes is a pandemic. It's rising at double digits in certain parts of the world. And I know something about it. So first I'd like to ask you a question. Is your son well?
Oh, absolutely. My son is doing very well. We are very, very fortunate to live in an area. I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area where there are excellent pediatric endocrinology practices. So we had wonderful care from day one. His diabetes was caught early enough that he never went into what some people refer to as a diabetic coma. It's a diabetic ketoacidosis where your blood sugar is so high that your body starts shutting down. He was not there. We had caught it early enough and recognizing a lot of symptoms. And we've been really lucky to be able in the U.S., we are all about the health insurance, unfortunately. We've had good health insurance through employers for his life, so we have access to insulin and the tools that we need. But he wears an insulin pump that is integrated with his continuous glucose monitor. So he wears two devices. They talk to each other. That's brand new as of about a year and a half ago. And that really, really helps to manage better. He is 16. He's a teenager. He's very independent, which means that he makes mistakes. He isn't perfect. And that's okay with me. In fact, I didn't mention I'm the author of a book called The World's Worst Diabetes Mom. And it is part memoir and part advice. I had it looked over by my endo friends, my diabetes educator friends. It's good information, but it's with a sense of humor to help other parents succeed.
Much, Stacey.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm so pleased to hear that your son is well and is 16 and growing, healthy, and all those things. Just if it's okay for it, it's like, can we just touch a little bit, deeper on diabetes and what's the difference between the type 1 and type 2?
Sure.
And can they be misdiagnosed? And how would you know about this?
Sure. So it is a wonderful question, and I really appreciate the moment to explain. So in a nutshell, and it's, we're all going to talk about our specialties. Diabetes really is such an issue for, I think, almost everybody. Everybody knows somebody with diabetes. But basically, all diabetes comes down to how your body breaks down sugar into energy, and not, sweets necessarily, how it breaks down glucose. So every food will be broken down into glucose, even meat, even vegetables. Eventually, it all turns to sugar in your body. When your pancreas produces insulin, and this is going to be a very layperson, simple explanation. When your pancreas produces insulin, the insulin breaks down that food into the glucose so that your body can use it in a safe way and turn it into energy. Your brain needs it. Your body needs it. We always tell kids, right? Food is the fuel. It's the energy. You put it in your body. It makes you go. So with type 2 diabetes, your pancreas is still producing insulin. It's still breaking down the glucose, but it's just not doing it as efficiently as it should be. So, when people start on insulin, if they need to, as a type 2 diabetic, sometimes the doses can be very, very large because their body's just not processing it in the right way. Again, very simple explanation. But with type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune issue. So your body has destroyed the insulin producing cells in the pancreas and it doesn't produce insulin anymore, or tiny, amounts of insulin. We're finding more and more as these studies go forward that people with type 1 might produce a little bit of insulin, which is extremely hopeful, but not enough to make a difference on its own. So if you cannot break down that food into, if you cannot break the sugar down so your body can use it for energy, it just floats all over your body. And it breaks down your organs. It's extremely dangerous to have that much glucose in the body. If there's not insulin there to turn it into energy, it basically breaks down tissue. The body starts to consume its own fat for energy. So that's why the classic symptoms of type 1 are you lose weight. My son was 30 pounds 1 month and 27 pounds the next month, which is not good for an almost 2-year-old. Extreme thirst, extreme urination, lots of, very sleepy, personality changes. But what happens is type 2 diabetes doesn't always present as, people think, obese, sedentary, there can be different ways. But type 1 isn't just in kids. In fact, half of all new cases are in people over the age of 25. So what often happens to adults is that their blood sugar is very high. They go see their general practitioner. They say, you have type 2 diabetes, take metformin. And then 2, 3, 4 years later, they're thin, they're exercising, they're eating well, they're taking their medication, but their A1Cs are elevated and they feel like garbage. It's thought that something like 30% of all adults with type 1 are initially misdiagnosed, and half of those misdiagnoses go on for more than 5 years. So I always like to tell, if I have an audience, if you are being treated for type 2 and it's not working, and especially if you have no family history and you don't fit the classic outline of type 2, ask for a C-peptide test. And the C-peptide test will show what kind of diabetes you really have. There's also a type called 1.5, which is not new. They're just they didn't even know there were different types of diabetes until I think something like the 1960s. So this one is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, or LADA, also called 1.5. And it presents very slowly. It's latent. So it presents like type 2, but it progresses as type 1. And that's where a lot of the misdiagnoses come in for adults. I could talk about it all day. So that's something to keep in mind for sure.
Thank you, Stacey, for making this kind of a distinction between the two type of diabetes. And wow, this kind of test, like a woman would just ask her general practitioner to write down this test, and I want to do it. Do you mind writing this in the chat for the people who are present and for the newcomers?
And I will say, I don't want to monopolize, but I would also just quickly say that many times we all know that women aren't listened to quite often by their health practitioners. And if you have gestational diabetes, that is usually a risk factor for type 2 later in life. So I have quite a few friends who had gestational diabetes and then developed type 1 later in life, and they were not listened to. So you got to fight for it. And I'll put that test in here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stacey. And we have here Kyoko with us. Good evening, Kyoko, and welcome.
Good evening. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm participating. Yeah. This is Kyoko Jansson. Hi. I'm participating from Sweden. So now 8 o'clock evening, but it's very light.
A brief introduction. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay. The floor is yours. The floor is yours.
I thought I'm speaking already. Yeah. I'm participating from Sweden now, 8 o'clock evening, but it's very light. I think it's same in London. is acquired by learning. But some people have difficulties to
Would you, Kyoko,
Yes.
would you be able to repeat? There's an internet connection from your side. We couldn't hear what you were saying.
Hear me like this.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I have no idea. Like I don't know why it happens. I'm really sorry.
It's all good, all good.
Okay, yeah.
Please start again.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Like we are developing the real. This is Kyoko Jansson from Sweden. Developing the content. So there's so many individuals who have lost continence. Can you hear me? No.
Now, yes, please continue. Yes.
I don't know why.
We can make it.
Yeah, I have no idea. Really unfortunate. Like it's really bad.
Please continue.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Then there are so many people, so many individuals who have lost continence. Is so 10% of each. Young women also suffer. Can you hear? No.
Please continue. There are some interruptions, but we can make it.
Oh, okay. Like
maybe if you reboot your modem for internet connection and try again to log in, while we can continue with the panel, and then you come again.
Yeah, now I can hear like everyone, but like it's really, I have done like many times like it has testing.
Yeah,
but no, no,
with interruptions.
No, okay, like I'm really. We can continue maybe for the discussion because like I don't want to waste over any time.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if you can write an introduction in the chat, so then the questions. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Kyoko. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for the kind. I would like. I'm curious to explore a little bit more this holistic therapy and self-care strategies. What do they actually mean, and where do they apply, and how should women think about this kind of things, Katie?
I almost started talking off mute. This self-care. So one of the modalities that I've studied with is called Arvigo Maya abdominal therapy. There is a massage that you receive from a practitioner in an office, but much of the work is teaching women and men, but primarily women, about different self-care practices you can incorporate into your daily life, and done for just 5 to 10 minutes a day, you can really see an improvement. The one that we feature in that work is a self-care abdominal massage, often paired with castor oil packs, which is castor oil applied to the abdomen with a hot pack on top, and that helps to soothe. There's a big nerve complex. I mean, the whole abdomen is innervated. I've even heard that there's like as many nerves in our gut as there are in our brain. So it's, not to be dismissed, the gut-brain connection, and just how complex the nerves are through our whole abdomen. So the castor oil packs combined with the self-care massage really help to, first of all, just connect you to your body in a positive way. Often when we're having health challenges and you start going down the normal allopathic Western route, it becomes very heavy and like Stacy was highlighting, you have to advocate for yourself if you don't feel like you're getting the right diagnosis or the right care. It can be very frustrating. You can start to feel like you're just being poked and prodded and tested and not really human in the process. And so these practices really, first of all, help you to just connect to your body. But what we've found is on a physiological level, by getting the circulation going in the abdomen, so many things are able to be balanced. You increase blood flow, lymphatic flow, the circulation throughout the entire digestive system, helping to support elimination. It helps to increase and improve liver function. I've had clients who've had menstrual challenges, which by just committing to these regular self-care practices have seen huge improvements that no medical treatments were really addressing, and they were just kind of at the end of their rope. With fertility, it's very supportive of just getting more blood flow to the reproductive organs and helping to balance everything out. There's a huge, interaction with our stress hormones and how it affects our fertility. So doing these practices also is just very relaxing. And stress is one of the inhibitors of a healthy menstrual cycle and therefore a healthy fertility. And so with our stress levels in our current world, it's no wonder fertility is challenged with that. So really supporting, and I love the self-care practices because it starts to put women in the driver's seat of their own health and really recognizing what their body feels like. And I lost my last thought. But anyway, yeah, that's the focus of the self-care practices. There's a practical physical benefit, but then also a stress reduction benefit, which helps to balance the hormones.
Fantastic. Yeah. And what would be the frequency of practicing this kind of a self-care massages or that?
Yeah, it really depends on the person and their lifestyle. Some women come and they have some issue and they're ready to address it and they're like all in. So, they want to do it every day, morning and night. They're really into it. And then there's other women who are just, their lives are so full that doing it a couple times a week even feels like too much for them. So you kind of meet people where they are. With the self-care massage, I usually recommend if you're addressing a more intense issue that we do it at least every other day, but it only takes like 5 minutes. So it's not like, a long meditation practice or going to a 90-minute yoga class. It's like putting lotion on your body. It's like brushing your teeth, So, and what I love about this practice is also all over the world, cultures used to have these women's health practices because there wasn't allopathic medicine. And this kind of brings you back to that, there's abdominal massages in almost every culture all over the globe. And we've kind of like lost touch with like how to care for ourselves. So I also love that part of this work as well.
Fantastic. So we will be just rubbing our bellies with some oil.
Like you have to come and do an intake and everything. So
we cannot do that because Corona doesn't allow us. But if you do a video on how to rub bellies, we can
do a video session on it for sure. They have. Due to this year, we're doing a lot of virtual advising. I do see clients right now in my practice in person in Portland, masked and, take some extra precautions. But they're doing it virtually with great success. There's a routine that we teach people Yeah, there's a whole, and then based on what's going on, you emphasize certain parts of it more than others, or vice versa. It's very personalized.
Thank you, Katie. So this evening we know how to rub our bellies to reduce stress.
Connect to your belly. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. I really like this kind of a self-care strategies, and without, popping another pill, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And getting also in touch with our own, because sometimes we're so busy.
Right. Yeah. And I've supported a lot of women like who are going through ART, assisted reproductive technology, going through an IVF or different fertility treatments. And they just find it such a nice counterbalance to all the poking and prodding and injections and being treated like a number. To just have this thing that really connects them to their bodies and it feels empowering.
Wonderful. And talking about, thank you, Katie. Talking about this kind of empowering the women and also getting in contact not only with our bellies, but I'm thinking our pelvic power movement. And we have who is a health specialist, curious about what's behind this kind of suffering when it comes to, the pelvic organ, and some of the numbers, related to women suffering from pelvic organ prolapse and incontinence post-childbirth. What's going on in this area, Esther?
Well, I'm not sure if it's more of a recent thing. I think it's just more spoken about. I think people come forward and seek help more these days. People are living longer, so they're experiencing symptoms for longer. And I think we just settle for less. I mean, sadly, females have been told for centuries just to get on with. It's part of childbirth. Just get on with it. It's something you've got to live with it. I always say a man would never put up with it. And they wouldn't. They'd be straight at their doctor and they want it get fixed. And, they would have had their solution by now. But women are very self-deprecating, aren't they? They're a bit martyr-like. I can deal with it. I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. They always are putting everybody else before themselves, taking care of their family, their husbands, and they're way down in their list of priorities. And I think it's only when it becomes a real serious problem that it's impacting their life to such a degree that they just can't ignore it any longer, that they actually seek help. Whereas if they were to seek help initially or in the early stages, they'd have a much better chance of recovering or just empowerment. So they wouldn't have to spend all those years suffering, anxiety and fear. I think a part of my opinion is part of it's to blame is the lack of women's health education in early years. I know that we've got people all around the world here listening in, but I know especially in the British education, this year we've been campaigning for menopause to go on the education curriculum. And only this year, in 2021, is menopause on the education. Well, it's a fantastic achievement, but it's centuries too late. But it is a step in the right direction. I think if we can get that information, that education into young women, then I think we'll be seeing less of a problem, in decades to come. So I think if somebody told me to do my pelvic floor before having 3 children, I also would be in a better state of affairs. So I think it is, isn't it? It's knowing that the trauma that can come with childbirth. I think we shelter women that get pregnant and we're afraid to tell them the reality because we don't want to scare them. But there are a lot of people in this world, and if a few women are too afraid, then it's not such a terrible thing. I think people need to go into it with their eyes wide open to know you would never have an operation, or you never do anything without knowing the risks and what could happen. So why is childbirth any different?
Definitely.
And then we'd be so much better prepared, wouldn't we? Coming out the other side, we'd take responsibility. I don't know about in the US, but British women are given a leaflet when they have a baby and told on to get on with it. they've got a lot of other things to be getting on with that is not top of their list. So so I'm trying to reach those who have got lost on the wayside and need a bit of extra help to get their confidence back.
And this is fantastic. I mean, talking about, confidence, in getting that confidence back is like, how is your pelvic power movement giving this kind of self-confidence back to the women who lost it because of, bringing into the world the next generation, the next, let's say, leaders of the world? It's like women here need to be protected. And with your pelvic movement, you're doing something amazing. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So in the society that we run, it's all about education. I'm very holistic, a bit like Katie. For me, it's not just a physical ailment to fix. A lot of it comes through birth trauma. If they still attach to that birthing trauma, then they're never going to let go and they're never going to move forward. So we do a lot of sort of mindset shift, motivation. I do pelvic health meditations, breath work, really to get that, like we were saying, I think Katie was saying, the brain-body connection. Somewhere along the lines, we lost it. And one of my first meditations that I teach people in this society is reconnecting with our pelvis. I always say a man knows every part of his male reproductive organs. He is so proud of it. He can, could pick it up in a line out. Majority of women have never even looked down there. They don't know what it looks like. So when it gets broken, they're like, oh, I don't know what it was like in the first place. And I think that's something that needs to change. We need to be prouder. We give life. No other species on earth gives life. We need to celebrate our femininity, not be ashamed of the way it smells, the way it looks, hiding menstruation. My poor children, my poor boys, they've seen and heard it all. So they're at least coming into the world with a good set of knowledge. But I think it is because, it's tragic when I have women come to me and they're like, this has happened and I'm not sure what's happened and I don't know what it was like before. Like, how can I get it back? And they're literally grieving. They're grieving for the women they were before, for the bodies they had before, for the life they were leading before. And, it's a slow process to try and build that positivity. And our group is very positive. I really encourage people to come forward with their small wins, and as we've been running it and the more courses of mine people go on, they come on, they're running again. For some women, this is a lifeline, an escape. They feel free, they feel empowered. And a lot of them have just been too scared and too worried that they were going to make it worse, or not having, there are small things you can do when you're running. Even the angle at which you run has an impact on your incontinence. If you lean forward slightly, that can prevent some people's incontinence. That's such a tiny, piece of information. And the angle at which you run can stop somebody wetting their pants. This information should be freely available. So that's what we're trying to do to try and we do it we do have a free group where women support each other, and we do have a paid membership where each month I bring in expert speakers. So people don't have access to surgeons, to nutritional specialists, to motivational speakers, to other gadgets that they might use to strengthen their pelvic floor. Like, I don't know if you've heard of pessaries and stuff like that. So really giving them some expert knowledge, because you can't find this information anywhere. You can't Google it. It's not out there. So I bring all these, luckily being in the field and having the network, I can bring these guest speakers and we can, have Q&A sessions, and they'll give talks on options. People need options, don't they? They want to know what are their options? Do I have to have surgery, or can I deal with this in another way? And I'm very much of, let's try and deal with this holistically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and at the last resort, go down a surgical route, because once you've gone down that route, there's no coming back from that. So, let's try and help.
This is quite insightful, Esther, and I really like this kind of a holistic approaches, and definitely you and Katie should have a follow-up conversation. And the fact that you mentioned incontinence and all those things. Actually, I know Kyoko, and she's developing a solution for this kind of a problem. So let's try to hear you on this, because you've been working on this for some time, and let's see if internet is supporting us.
I really don't know. Like
it's working. Just say it.
Yeah, I really don't know. Like I'm really sorry. Like I really wanted to share with you, and this is a problem. And I'm not from medical side, so that's why I really wanted to ask your opinion to the. It's almost ready. Its product is actually like the blood scanner using electric signal transmission to compare the signal strengths to estimate your fluidity of your bladder. So then, for example, like it notifies your caregivers to the time to attend your toilet function in time. So you are always fresh and fresh.
The power of technology.
Yeah. So it's also for many women, for example, and like as I wrote, like without noticing, the urine is just coming. So that's why we must know that the people asking me like, why do we need to know how it's accumulated in your bladder? But it is extremely important. Some people, no urgency, no feeling, just like running to the knees. That is really frustrating. So that's why we really wanted to develop this kind of product to see like how much urine is accumulated, and also, for example, like the after toilet, if I mean like. It's actually 250 milliliter or more. That you really see afterwards. So I hope maybe you will hear. I'm really sorry, like I'm not a native English speaker. That's why I really wanted to have like a best set of like the internet. Actually, I talked to
good Kyoko.
So I really wanted
This is really insightful, and actually, if I may read what you just mentioned in the chat for everyone, you were saying that the majority of individuals have partial damage to the nerve pathways and suffer neurological problem. And the type of bladder dysfunction depends on what area and level of the brain or spinal cord is injured. Didn't even know about this.
We didn't know. Yeah, so it's quite difficult for us to, for example, like addressing like older people, for example, like the pelvic floor training. Those people like after childbirth, those people are on muscle, bladder smooth muscle. So those people like it's really hard for us, but like nerve problem and spinal cord injury, those people we can. Like in the next I mean like in the future we wanted to can see like what is actually bladder itself problem. So the muscle or like the sphincter.
Yeah. And you were also mentioning that after childbirth, many young women suffer some kind of incontinence, but they are obviously there's embarrassment associated that Esther mentioned, that there's a bit of a stigma and there's no education around this. And guess what? They're not seeking assistance. So maybe with a solution like yours, that it's, let's say, hidden and also offer certain level of intimacy, they can solve this kind of a problem with the prediction model that you have in place.
Yeah, because like if somebody has a problem and then it goes to Esther for example, like a training, and then I think it's easier. Like, it's not necessary to develop like huge problem. So, but like young women, 25, 20 or something. So then it's like coughing, and then the urine came or like wet. It's very much embarrassing, and like you cannot actually tell the friends, and then don't seek for assistance. So then 60 or something, then it's getting really worse. So that is overactive bladder. That is coming like maybe 100 milliliter, 400 milliliters all the time. So that's why we need actually Esther and Kathy to get education.
That's why we are here to discuss this kind of topics. We know they're a little bit taboo, but we can stop these taboos from happening. And this takes me to
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
This takes me to Stacey. Not only the stigma associated with incontinence, but also around diabetes. And why is it okay to sort of joke about this condition and not others?
Yeah, isn't it strange how and it's not as much as it was before. What I'm going to say, the stigma is still there, but for a long time, the hashtag diabetes was something people were putting on their desserts on Instagram, and there's still, that happens all the time, diabetes on a plate, diabetes in a cup. You'll see on a newscast, Starbucks new frothy pink drink is diabetes in a cup. And there's this complete misconception. Yes, obviously a poor diet and sedentary lifestyle and obesity is linked to more cases of type 2 diabetes, but more people are developing type 2 diabetes without those risk factors. I just did a story last week on pollution. Car pollution seems to be a risk, especially in communities of color, to bring on more cases of type 2 diabetes. There's a huge genetic component. It's a really understudied issue because I think there's a big assumption that people did this to themselves. And that's where this, in the diabetes community, we refer to it as the blame and the shame, right? Because somebody might have diabetes and they don't even want to tell their family because the feeling is, well, why don't you just eat better? Go run. Don't stop, stop eating rice. So you hear all sorts of crazy things. Eat more cinnamon. But I always say, if it were all that easy, we'd all be a size 2, right? I mean, there's nothing easy about losing weight, and weight and health are not always linked. I mean, we all know this, especially as women. We've had these things drilled into us since we were 2 years old that we have to be super thin and but we're supposed to also be able to eat a hamburger and be cool, and be a gourmet cook and, drink a beer and run a marathon. And it just makes me crazy. So, but back to diabetes. I spent the first couple of years with my son saying to people, like, he didn't do it to himself. Like, how much sugar do you think I fed a 2-year-old? No, it wasn't because of that. He doesn't have type 2 diabetes, and being kind of defensive about it and inadvertently throwing people with type 2 under the bus and not even thinking about what I was doing. And it wasn't until I got better connected in the community and realized that the stigma that's around diabetes, the whole diabetes community, is actually preventing people from seeking treatment. It's preventing people from getting the help they need. It's like Esther said earlier, a lot of times women just say, well, I'll just handle it, or I'm you don't say I'm a martyr, but that's how they react. And I also think that even women who speak up and are kind of a pain in the butt to their doctors may be dismissed. They just don't take us seriously. I had a surgery at one point where I knew the doctor and I didn't like the way something went. I had not yet been sedated and I was being taken into the surgery. And I said to him, if I were a man, this would never have happened. He wouldn't have put up with it. And he was like, okay, give her the drugs right now. But we talked about it after and he concurred. He hadn't thought about something that I had pointed out. And it's really, it's just one of those things that when you think about it, most physicians want to help their patients. They don't even know they're doing it half the time. But back to diabetes, it's very difficult to make changes when you feel like it doesn't matter. It's very difficult to ask your doctor about options, whether it's insulin or injectables that aren't insulin, but that can make a huge difference in your life if you feel like you don't deserve the good health. You don't deserve the decent treatment. You don't deserve. I have so many friends. I'll give you a good example. A dear friend of mine is very overweight and is in her early 50s and hadn't gone to the doctor for several years. And I finally said to her, look, you've got to go to the doctor. You can live a long and healthy life being overweight. We're that kind of friendship. But you can't live a long and healthy life if you have these other, I hate to say comorbidities, but you know what I'm talking about. If you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, you cannot. And I want to live a long time with you and be old ladies and go on cruises. So go see your doctor. And she did. And she had a very high A1C. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And the doctor wanted to put her on medication. And she didn't want to take it because she's like, well, I really should diet and I should just exercise my way out of this. And I know so many, you see in all the magazines, reverse your diabetes. And again, I said to her, maybe you will. But in the meantime, get safe. Don't expose yourself to the risk of complications, because it's not realistic to say, I'm never going to eat another Snickers bar or I'm never going to eat another carbohydrate, more realistically, right? So get the medication, get the treatment. Yes, it's wonderful if you can eat well and exercise, but these kind of things can really add years to your life and a better health to your life. And if you're worried, well, I just shouldn't eat that, or I should be a better person because of this public shaming. And it's remarkable to me how it goes on. It really can be detrimental. I do think that diabetes is shamed more because people feel like it's a sign of being lazy. It's a public failing, which still doesn't make too much sense. I think it's a matter of education. But when we look at people with cancer or people with other health conditions, high blood pressure, when you go to the doctor, you're a 65-year-old man, you go to the doctor, you're on cholesterol medication. You don't go home saying, oh my God, the guilt, if only I ate better. You just take the medication. Nobody thinks of it in the same way. And I think diabetes is just seen as a joke. It's become a punchline. It's a little bit of something that people feel like you did to yourself. And until we get over that, then I think it's going to be very difficult to make substantive changes.
Thank you, Stacey. Actually, not only diabetes is seen as a bit of a stigma, but also cardiovascular diseases. You might think that, cardiovascular diseases, just, people who are, overweight and eat badly and so on, they will incur those ones. Actually, that's false. And actually, younger and younger women in their 20s and 30s can just drop dead in 5 minutes without knowing that they had a heart attack or a heart condition. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do with Code de Fuel, because more or less what you said about diabetes, actually it relates to cardiovascular diseases. There's a lot of bias versus women. And in particular, cardiovascular diseases are considered a male disease. But guess what? More and more women have overpassed men at, sadly to say, at successfully dying from something that it's 80% preventable. So more women are losing their lives because of cardiovascular diseases. And this comes down to the stigma and this kind of overlap with mental illnesses, because women present atypical symptoms. They don't enter the case. How traditionally cardiovascular diseases have been studied on middle-aged white male, but women have hormones and have many other, let's say sophisticated systems that guess what they present. And there it goes with the let's say prolonged diagnosis time, thinking diagnosis and treatment and so on. And I think, Stacey, you wanted to add something.
I was just going to say that, unfortunately, having diabetes increases your risk of heart disease or heart attack, and it increases it 4-fold in women and only 2-fold in men. And I haven't really seen why that is, but it's something that is there. And as you said, it doesn't even matter the age. So it's very, it's, again, as I said to my friend, you can be overweight and live a long, healthy life, but you can't if you don't have, if untreated diabetes is really, really dangerous.
It is. And we cannot agree more with that. And actually it causes a certain level of trauma that we as women, but also our families and so on, have to have this kind of an extra burden when it comes to trauma.
Yeah.
And this more or less takes me to the next topic of this deep dive when it comes to trauma resolution. How do we deal with that, and what kind of traumas? And here we have Katie, who's a specialist in, the inner wisdom, motherhood, and trauma resolution. What does it mean, and what focus is there? Is this only for the mothers or for women in general? Tell us a little bit more about that, Katie.
Sure. Thank you for bringing this forward. Well, if you're human, you've probably experienced some sort of trauma along the way. There's like a wide range of different ways that our systems experience events as traumatic. And the broad definition that I like to use is something that was too fast, too much, and too just overwhelming to your system for you to stay present with what's happening. So that can be a classic example of trauma, can be like getting in a car accident. That's sort of like what we think of as a traumatic event. And you can imagine in your mind, like if you've been in an accident or what that would be like, or witnessing an accident like that. But then there's more like, that would be like a big T trauma. And then a little T trauma are more like the subtle traumas of living in, growing up in homes that were not supportive, that were either emotionally, physically, or even sexually abusive, or had layers or time periods of that. So people can carry a lot of what they call complex PTSD from growing up in an environment that was traumatizing to a young child. There can be childbirth can be traumatizing, where in the process of giving birth, either something that happens medically to you feels like too much, too fast, too overwhelming for your system to be able to keep up with it. There's a myriad of things that can occur during childbirth that can feel traumatizing. And that's all to say that trauma you can have that experience, and then with a healthy, supportive, loving support system, community, be able to move through that trauma and not be suffering from any after effects from it. However, a lot of us don't necessarily have that or understand the tools. And so some of the symptoms that you may not recognize as like triggers for being traumatized are like in new motherhood, feeling hypervigilant. Like you can't, even while your baby's sleeping, you can't really sleep because you're like, are they breathing? Are they breathing? Are they going to die? Did I put them down right? Just these like and that's normal in new motherhood to some extent, but this is like more of an intrusive, like thinking everywhere you go, like someone's going to harm your baby in the grocery store or some, just things that don't really like match the level of the safety of the situation. There's other ways that trauma shows up, where something happens and all of a sudden you have an overwhelming explosion of anger or crying that doesn't match what's happening. So those can be signs that you have something from a past event where the trauma kind of gets stuck in these parts of our brains and memory that then need tending in order to move through and move out, so that your nervous system can then come back into a more regulated and normalized state. But without getting that kind of treatment, whether it's through seeing a psychotherapist or a somatic experiencing practitioner, a biodynamic craniosacral therapist, like there's all different ways to meet trauma. There's drama and expressive arts therapy, but without meeting those parts of the brain, you're just going to keep having these triggers, and it's just going to keep cycling as an opportunity, telling you like, hey, like this part of you and this experience needs support and needs to be met. And what we find is by doing these practices that really get you into your body more, the trauma can then move through. It can move out of the memory part where you're constantly getting tripped up on things, and you get into a more regulated state, into a more present state. The simplest way to explain it is like you're not just like at the mercy of your reactions. You can actually get into a state where you're like, oh, I know I can respond with presence in this situation instead of just reacting to try to get yourself safe. It's usually a feeling of like needing to somehow get yourself feeling safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like getting into the discussion of trauma. I could talk about this forever. It's really hard to talk about in a short period of time because there's the body reactions, there's the mental, there's the emotional, there's just the, like in the more indigenous and shamanic communities, they talk about it as like a soul loss, and like, or your soul being sort of split apart. So it's a multi-layered thing that there's a teacher and researcher named Gabor Mate who's based in Vancouver, British Columbia, and he's done work with tons and tons of different populations that have severe addictions, and he found that in almost all cases there was a severe either single traumatic event or complex PTSD that every addict had. So it's a societal issue that really needs to be addressed. The more you can heal any traumas that you've suffered, the more health you can show up with in your current life. And I think this is really important for women, and that a lot of these undiagnosed or vague symptoms, like with the pelvic pain and pelvic health, and I just think there's always almost like some sort of trauma laid in there that can be addressed to help to get the nervous system to regulate, and then everything functions better.
This is really insightful, Casey. And for all of us here listening to what you're saying, before we reach the shamans of the world, do you have one immediate approach that, or maybe one method that we can all implement in our daily lives when we miss the bus? That's a trauma or something, you know what I mean?
Right. You're like, why am I reacting to this so strongly? Well, the main thing, like so many of the holistic health modalities, just start with the breath.
Can you show us how it's done? So shall we all do it together?
Yeah, okay. Sure. And I recommend, if it feels comfortable and you're not in a place where you feel weird doing this, putting your hands on your body somewhere. I like to say on your heart. It kind of feels like a safe and comfortable, protective feeling. Some people like to put their hands on their thighs so that you're really like feeling your legs on the ground, feeling your feet touching the ground. So with your hands on your body somewhere, so you're really connecting, like, I'm here, I'm in my body. You can close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. And it's not any particular kind of breath like in yoga or other mindfulness practices. Just start to tune into your breath. What is it doing? Is it just in your chest? Often when there's, a event that feels something that's triggering you that feels overwhelming, it's like the breath feels really shallow and sort of faster. And then as you start to breathe and notice where your hands are on your body, you might notice that you start to take deeper, slower breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you do that, you just kind of follow what you're feeling. Like, if it's something that's really getting you fired up, like making you angry, you might need to kind of shake your hands or wiggle your legs or something. If it's something that just kind of makes you collapse, maybe you just need to stand there and really just breathe and assure yourself that you're there. It's the present moment. So that's usually where I start with people. It's actually pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, a lot of the trauma resolution practices and community practices that are ritual based actually have the effect of resolving trauma. So like singing, dancing, chanting, drumming, shaking, all of those things actually help to move that through our nervous system so that we can feel more calm and regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is fantastic for sure.
yeah.
Now that we all are refreshed after this breathing exercise. Thank you, Katie.
Definitely help with the cardiovascular and like regulating blood sugar for sure.
Wonderful.
The breathing, the mindfulness work. Yeah.
I love it. And talking about mindfulness and also trauma resolutions, and that through mindfulness is more or less is taking me towards Esther around sports, right? Women and sports. You were a sports injury specialist and so on. And we know that many women are quite sporty and that. Well, what's your approach to, your pelvic health, but it goes even beyond that, with your praxis? How are you helping women with sports injuries to overcome that trauma?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Katie was saying, it's so many other things can help women overcome trauma. And I think for a lot of women, sport is an escape, isn't it? And not being able to release that physically, energetically, mentally, the pent-up stress. I know that if work's been hard or the kids are driving me mad, the best thing is just to go for a run, 20 minutes, half an hour running. And I feel like a new woman, I come back calm. We often talk like our vibrations can get really heavy, can't they? Especially when we're stressed. And you need, you don't want to wallow in that the whole day. You need a quick fix to just shake it off. And some, high intensity exercise really is a fantastic way. Yes, there are other ways, like music is fantastic and dancing. But, if a woman is struggling with her activity because maybe she has a pelvic injury or maybe she has another injury, her knee or her ankle or her back, she's still suffering the same ailments and she's restricted in her activity. So I'm, as I always say, I'm holistic. So some people may come to me with incontinence, but actually we discover it's because she's got back pain. And because she's got back pain, the muscles in her pelvis aren't working, or she's got knee pain, which is affecting her hip, which is affecting her pelvis. Our bodies are so interlinked. You can't just take one time, take a microscope and look on that part and be like, well, it's all about this. It's not, we have to look at everything. And sometimes we really become attached to our injuries, don't we? If you're not willing to let go of that injury, I'm sure Katie has. And it's funny, we always laugh with my other therapist friends, like, when a patient comes in, as soon as they walk through the door, I know that if I'm going to get better or not. I can't explain their posture, the way they speak to me, their attitude. I know that if they're buying into me or they're not. And if they're buying into me, half the battle is complete. I know that they're going to action the things like, if they're going to listen to me, they're going to take note of what I've said, and they've got a really good fighting chance of recovering. But some people are so attached, and it's become part of their persona, that it doesn't matter how many surgeons, treatments, whatever they have, they just don't want to let go of it. It's like it becomes
Why
part
is
of
that? Why is that?
That
How
is
come?
beyond my expertise. I'll be honest. I don't know. I think when you've had an ailment for so long, it gives, especially as you get older, we have less and less things to talk about. Lots of women are amazing and they carry on working and they have social lives, but some people really own their ailments. I know that, like, if I look at my grandparents' friends, they come around to talk about their problems, their issues. This hurts, that hurts. I'm not well. I'm not sleeping. I'm not this. And because their day isn't as full as it was, they haven't got kids driving them mad. They haven't got to go to work. They haven't got loads of jobs. Something else has to take that space. And that's really personal, isn't it? And
I'd like to recruit them for the things I'm doing. If they don't have anything else to do apart from complaining about pain,
exactly.
oh, well, they should come on board.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested to hear from maybe a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist to understand deeper why people attach so much to their ailments, and that inability to shed them really prevents them from recovering on so many levels. And I think some of the work we do, trying to release the birth trauma and meditation and breath work, does help move forward with that and alleviate. But some people have such a strong attachment, it needs more than just a bit of meditation and breath work. They need really probably to see a therapist. And I think that's where we can't just be individual therapists. We need to work in a multidisciplinary team. We have to understand that we can't solve every problem and we can't help every patient. We need those connections and that network to say, look, I've come as far as I can with you. I think you need to see this therapist or go and see them and then come back, or maybe work together as a team really to move that person forward in their goal and give them the best chance of, getting to where they want to be.
I like the working together and different specialists working together, because at the end of the day, like, you're wonderful speakers, you are experts in the holistic world. So we're not just, organs that we can look in, in isolation from the whole thing. And unless just conscious of our amazing engagement so far, we're approaching the end. We just have just a bit of more than 10 minutes together. And I have a question for all of you. It's like, what made you, was this sort of your dream or your passion to do what you're doing right now? Or how did you discover this kind of a mode? I know that Stacey discovered with her son in a few years ago, 14 years ago. Yes, Stacey. But wondering about, how did you discover this thing? And maybe if we can spend 1 minute on this. Would you like to start, Stacey? And
Sure,
what makes you
sure.
all with?
Yeah. And I think, as you said, I wasn't planning on doing a lot with diabetes. It wasn't part of my life. And then when my son was diagnosed, it became a huge part of our life. And what happened to me was I was working in radio at the time in a job where we didn't talk about our personal lives very much, but my audience wanted to know more. They knew that my son had been diagnosed and they were concerned. So I started a blog about a month later, and that blog led me to the Diabetes Online community, which is an incredible group of now thousands of people. Back then it was a little smaller because the internet seemed smaller in 2007. But I think what helped me become passionate about doing this and speaking out and talking and doing podcasts is the community and the need for community in diabetes. So I started out by kind of joking around about how they give you insulin and send you home and say, try not to kill yourself. And it's a joke, but it's really, really a condition, whatever type of diabetes you have, it's very isolating. It's very lonely. People do not understand it if they're not going through it.
Yeah.
And having that community has made an incredible difference in my life. And so I share stories and I give news and I talk about it in the hopes that people who don't have their own community and haven't found that yet can just have a voice that's on their side.
Wonderful, Stacey. I really like the voice on their side in the sense of community. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's something that I think women are really good at creating this kind of communities.
I do too.
And thank you, Stacey. Kyoko, from your side, what's your 1 minute, thinking about why you're doing what you're doing and how did you get involved in this specific topic of incontinence?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I have been working for welfare products and the medical device. And then 300,000 elderly people at home in Sweden would like to do toilet function by themselves. But they can't. They need assistance. But eventually, the elderly forced to sit on wet diapers for several hours. It increases risks of infection. Today, the work is done everything by routine, not with the patient safety. So I feel really sad of this. We have done quite a lot of stuff, maybe from clothes on, we measure cardiovascular, for example, the ECG. So that technology, I think we can use for this to measure how much urine is accumulated in your bladder. So that's why we make this, because it's for all elderly women. They wanted to go, they knock on the door, but nobody assists them. So it's actually, they said, the personnel or caregiver said, okay, we can change it for you. 6 o'clock, you have diapers, it's okay. It's not okay. So it's a lot of money for infection handling cost. So they don't care, just seeing at this moment, we must do that. So just for safe hygiene, for active life, not only elderly people, we young people, even healthy people. So thank you.
This is quite inspiring, Kyoko. I mean, your technology can make a real difference in people's lives. Elderly, obviously, and I feel inspired about it, and I'm pretty sure the others as well. What about you, Katie? How did you get into what you're doing right now? 1 minute only.
1 minute. It was a personal journey. My first, the circles that I'm leading now for birth trauma stemmed out of my own experience with having an extremely traumatizing birth of my daughter about, she'll be 10 in September, so almost 10 years ago. And I was already studying. I had been a body worker for about 10 years at that point, and I had already studied the trauma resolution work. And then I had a traumatic birth, so it just sort of married my professional and personal life as these things do. And and I'm just an advocate for healthy and empowered birth experiences, and then, how to help people if it doesn't go that way. So, yeah.
Thank you.
It was a personal and professional.
And that's the best. That's sort of your ikigai, so to say. I mean, Kyoko is Japanese, so she knows a lot about ikigai.
Yeah. It was just a natural unfolding.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. And for you, Esther?
Yeah, for me, actually, it was very similar. A molding of professional and personal circumstances. Obviously, as a physio, I was really aware of my body, but after having children and having a traumatic first birth and experiencing like prolapse and incontinence, and then realizing, even as a physiotherapist, I wasn't sure what to do about it. And I started sort of taking myself on a journey to find out what were my options. And I really struggled to find the information. And I thought, if me, who knows what they're looking for, can't find it, what chance has anybody else out there got? And I think once I managed to fit the pieces together, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this easier for everybody else. I'm going to put them in one place. And so nobody else has to struggle, because I mean, that's one of my selling points is like, you know, you're Googling well into the night, you know, anxiety and fear is building. You don't find the answers. And then what do you do? Despair. You know, it shouldn't be like that. So I wanted to make sure everybody could access the information that they needed. And yeah, it was for me, you know, a personal journey on a professional level. And I think that it was great because I was so interested, you know, professionally, medically, about what I was doing, and I'm constantly learning. That it's been a fantastic journey, and there's so much more to learn and so much more to do that, you know, I'm hopeful for the future and the lives we can change.
Wonderful. Thank you, Esther. Same here. Very hopeful, especially that more and more women are advocating for this. And this more or less takes me to we have 5 minutes left together. Maybe a question, like if you were, you know, to give one advice, the best advice you've ever received related to healthcare or self-care or whatever that you would like to share with everyone here, what would that be? Maybe I'll start with Stacey.
Wow, that's a tough one. Yes. The timer go. I would say find your people, find your community, find the people that speak with you. I was going to say speak for you, but find the people with whom you feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be, you know, there's not one group probably within your health condition or within what you're looking for. So find the people that make you feel like you belong and that you are wanted and welcomed. And work that group, you know, find out all you can and just don't stop looking. That community is out there for you, whether it's through conferences like this or podcasts or magazine articles or, you know, start with Google searches, but find your patient community and your people, and that will make all the difference.
Thank you, Stacey. I mean, I think you were some of my people. You were my people. So I'm feeling really grateful that, you know, I met you here. For you, Katie?
I would say best advice for any woman is to learn to trust yourself and the messages you're receiving from your body, and, you know, use that as a guide to how you seek support and the kind of support you seek. And yes, talk about it, find community, find other people that are having the same issue. The more we talk about these things, the more research, the more funding, the more these things are going to become like common knowledge to our daughters and our granddaughters. And I just think it's so important that people talk and really trust your body and what it's telling you.
I love it. I love it. Trust your body. That's what I'm going to do from now on. What about you, Kyoko? 30 seconds advice for all the women out there?
Yeah, it's really community, like, you know, like anonymous community, like you can talk, like you can get advice anytime, anywhere. And it's actually like going to the toilet or like wet. Actually, everyone's problem. 2.3 billion people suffering, like, you know, the roots. So it's no problem. We can share. Yeah, that's I think.
Thank you. And sharing. Yeah, that's sweet. OP. Yeah. Thank you, Kyoko. Esther?
Yeah, I think everybody's made some great points. It's definitely finding your community and trying to prioritize yourself. As women, we're always last on the list. If we can just try and find 10 minutes a day to put ourselves first, to appreciate, value ourselves, put our problems top of the list, then we probably wouldn't suffer with so many. We'd probably handle them a bit quicker and get them dealt with. But definitely a community is so important for you to be able to voice them and get support.
Wonderful. It seems that the sense of community and also empowering each other, ourselves, and our people, it's the message of this deep dive. And I'm really grateful and appreciative of all your great insights. I've taken lots of notes, so for sure I want to share this with my extended communities, because every woman, but also men, need to know about these things. And what you've just shared this evening, today, well, it's really invaluable. So I can say a big thank you to you all for being part of this. And any last word from anyone else? And I would love to stay in contact with all of you. And we should stay connected.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you just for having us on.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Kyoko,
I'm really
Stacey,
sorry,
Esther.
the sound.
And please stay well and safe and happy and connected. And we'd love to hear more other tips. For sure, I'm going to sign up to Esther's free pelvic health workshop,
Please
which
do.
is really important. And once again, thank you so much. And spirit together.
Terrific.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of the
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.